If you've done any drywall, you know probably the worst part about drywall is the sanding. Well, I found a product recently that completely eliminates the need of sanding whatsoever when mudding drywall. So all I have to do is install the drywall and then mud it with the secret mud. If you want to learn how to do it, keep on watching. Let's get started.
In the past, I've taken on numerous drywall projects, whether it was for my own home or for clients. And the one thing I hate about the drywall process is the waiting around portion. Waiting around between coats, making sure that each coat is completely dry before I can apply a second coat. And since I'm not a professional drywaller, it will always take me at least 2 to 3 coats of mudding before I can have a beautiful finished wall for texture and paint. This drywall repair was needed in my own garage due to water intrusion issues during the winter, and now this is a perfect time to utilize this product for the very first time.
This is the star of our show today, and this is Muddskip. Now there's 2 different products. There is a more heavy duty version, but there's also a level 5 smooth version. One of these bags is added either to a bucket of mud or 1 equals 1 bag of dry mud, depending on how much you want to actually mix up to begin with. That's your prerogative. But the extremely unique thing about this product is the fact that all you have to do is add a bag of this, and all of a sudden you can apply wet mud to wet mud. You don't have to let it dry overnight, and you're able to completely apply a second coat within 20 minutes to an hour, depending on the humidity and how long this takes to dry. All you have to do is make sure that when you imprint your finger into the mud that's on the wall, that it doesn't leave an imprint. As long as that's the case, you're okay to apply a second coat, supposedly. So let's try it out and see how we do.
I'm trying out their level 5 smooth bag first, and as I open it, it basically just looks like a packet of normal drywall mud. But I'm going to be adding this to a pre-mix container. This is a 5-gallon pail, and I'm going to be applying this whole bag into this container. In order to make sure that this product is fully mixed thoroughly within a 5-gallon pail, you do want to make sure you have a heavy duty mixer, which I do have on hand due to a previous construction overlay project that I've already done. As you can imagine, this powder thickens up this mud very quickly, so adding water is definitely going to be needed. Just make sure you're adding it slowly and you don't put too much water into your mix. If you're a fan of the BYOT channel, you probably know that this is actually a much smaller type of project that I normally take on this channel, but I felt like I saw this product at a recent trade show and I just had to try it out for myself. And since there's seemingly 0 videos on YouTube about this product, I figured it'd be a perfect video opportunity that not only helps the homeowner, but also helps the professional tradesman. And as you can see firsthand, I am not a professional drywaller. I have limited skill sets and I have done numerous drywall projects, but I'm not a professional, which in all honesty, hopefully this makes it more genuine because not everyone is a professional drywaller, and the vast majority of people out there that want to do some drywall repair like this are not going to have those perfectly silky smooth movements across an entire wall, especially if it's a large patch job like this, which makes things even more cumbersome since it's in an awkward area like this. We don't all have a perfect wide open wall where you can easily seam up all those seams very quickly and easily. At the tail end of the video, I will give a special shout out to one of my favorite professional drywallers out there that is also doing YouTube, and hopefully in the future he can also provide some feedback on this type of product. But getting back to the application portion of this project, I am just skim coating this entire wall, but I'm also making sure that I have a very large heavy bead where that seam is, because it is a slightly more substantial seam that isn't completely flush with the existing drywall along with the repair piece that I already installed. At first glance, this product really doesn't feel much different in comparison to what I've already used in the past, but by the end of this video, I assure you that thought process will change. While I wait for the first patch repair to harden up a bit, I decide to try out the second bag of Muddskip, which as you can see is used for heavy duty portions. Now this is for large cracks and crevices, which we do have on an adjacent wall in my garage. This dry sack of drywall mix is a 20-minute bag, which basically means you have 15 minutes of use time. So in order to make sure that I'm not wasting the whole bag, I'm only using a partial amount of Muddskip and a partial amount of that bag itself, Just as a general reminder, make sure you're washing off your tools right away when using this product. These 20-minute drywall bags are notorious for hardening like a rock, and it is not easy to remove once it's dried. And trust me, I've learned this the hard way. When using this product, I did notice an extreme difference with the smoothness of application, because in the past, when I've used these 20-minute bags, it was always difficult to have a nice smooth pass with my trowel. However, with this mix along with the Muddskip, it was much smoother to apply. The only problem is that this product, again, is notorious for hardening very quickly, and I was not keeping track of time, so this did harden up on me as I was installing this edging piece. But again, the beauty about this Muddskip additive is that even if that product is fully hardening, I can instantly apply a second coat of it with the level 5 smooth mud that I previously mixed up on the first patch. In all honesty, I probably should have just used the level 5 smooth on both sections, but I did want to try out both products, and the 20-minute mud just made things a lot more difficult because it was time sensitive, obviously. My mistake, and I'm not going to get the perfect first application on this section, so this will just give us a good opportunity of how well this product sands in comparison to what I've seen in the past on other muds. As I wait for this first coat to dry on this side, I move my way back to the first patch area, and I'm going to be utilizing this skimming blade that I never really knew about until I saw it being used at the trade show where I saw this product for the first time. I also picked up a simple misting bottle that they also were utilizing at the trade show, which simply just applies a small amount of water evenly over the entire surface that you spray. Then I'm using my skimming blade just to knock down some of those edges to have a little bit more of a smoother finish before I start applying our second coat of mud. And this is where the Muddskip additive really comes into play, because I certainly have never applied 2 coats of mud to the same area in one day. This is basically approximately an hour to an hour and a half between each coat, which means that I didn't have to wait around hardly at all before I was applying my second coat. After I was done applying it to the first patch area, I went straight to my second patch area and started to apply a second coat there as well. This was definitely an area that wasn't picture perfect even after a second coat, but still to this point there has not been any sanding involved whatsoever. While I wait a bit for the second coat to harden up a bit, I decided to make a test, because on Muddskip's website they do indicate that they have some fire retardant elements as well built into their product. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a board, one being just plain drywall, one being just straight mud, and one being mud with Muddskip additive built into it, and see if there's any difference. Don't know at this point, but figured I'd try it out and help the audience know one way or the other if it is beneficial. We'll let this dry for a day and come back to it at the tail end of this video to truly test if this makes any difference with a standard drywall mud.
So this is after 2 coats. I'm applying a third coat just because there's still some variance. This was kind of a hefty little seam right here. So trying to smooth out everything. Pretty surprising that I haven't done a single aspect of sanding on this wall, along with applying the second coat while the first coat was still drying. That's pretty impressive and almost unheard of from my perspective in terms of how to mud. But from a layman, pretty impressed already. Now let's apply the third and final coat and see where we get without any sanding.
I've used a number of different types of trowels while applying drywall mud in the past, but I've never used this type of skimming blade before. And it's actually very nice to use, especially because it does a very nice job of minimizing those trowel marks once the drywall mud is spread evenly across the entire area. Plus, after working with this Muddskip product, I do quickly realize that it basically just turns a general bucket of drywall mud into more of a plaster, which is why you're able to get such a smooth, clean surface comparatively to a normal standard mud product.
The other really nice thing about this is that because it goes on so smooth, the coats that I'm applying it are actually super thin. I mean, paper thin, smooth coat on this third pass. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Very smooth. We'll see how we do. So I've literally let this thing sit for 10 minutes. So I'm gonna come back around, see if I can clean up a little bit of this, since this is the final pass, to make it as perfect and as clean as possible, but also wet it down nicely a little bit too.
When doing this last and final pass, you do want to desperately make sure that that skimming blade is perfectly clean, because if it's not, you're probably not going to have a completely smooth surface with no buildup on the edges. And that's how we get these perfect, nice, crisp passes without any excess mud runoff off the blade itself.
I am quite impressed with the fact that I've gotten this finish with 3 layers of mud in 1 day, 0 sanding. Pretty amazing.
As for our second patchwork area, I wasn't so lucky because, as you can see, there's some definite large buildup which I had to knock off and sand at the same time, and that means that I do have to sand this area down comparatively to the first patch job. One other key note is that this product is a harder sanding process. Not an extreme difference, but I do quickly realize that because this is more of a plaster and it's more dense, it does take a little bit more effort to sand this surface down in the long run. Now that we have this area sanded down to an appropriate amount, we applied our third and final coat of the Muddskip mud, apply that evenly, and make sure it dries accordingly before we get to texture and paint. I do have a feeling like we're going to have to sand this a little bit more, but let's let it dry first. As we wait for this area to fully dry out, let's take a look at our fire test, because that board is now fully dry. I had decided to use my torch and just apply the torch to each area for approximately 60 seconds, just to see what type of variance we're going to see between each section. Also, please keep in mind that this is not a sponsored video. They're not paying me to do this. I don't even have an affiliate program built into their products since they don't sell on Amazon. And I'm always giving my honest and true opinion about the projects that I take on, but seemingly the narrow few that do place negative comments on my channel are mainly because they think it's an ad or some type of sponsorship. No sponsorship here, just literally trying out a product for the very first time. After all 3 sections have been fire blasted, I took a look and realized there's actually not much of a difference. I'm actually surprised by how well just the plain drywall had done. There might be a slight advantage with the Muddskip, but I can't say that that is 100% something that is going to benefit any homeowner if there is a significant fire in the house. But now let's put on the finishing touches on these walls themselves. I always suggest applying a high quality drywall primer prior to actual painting or texture, just because you want to make sure you have everything sealed up appropriately before you get to that step. I would normally be applying some type of texture to these walls, however I am not on this project because of 2 main reasons. Number 1, it's a garage and all the adjacent walls aren't textured anyways, so why do it? And 2, I don't want to hide any imperfections that a texture would normally conceal very easily. And speaking of imperfections, yes, there are some edges that need to be cleaned up very quickly and easily with a sanding block. The vast majority of all these flat surfaces really didn't need a ton of sanding, but the edges did, and I made sure that that was taken care of before we got to primer and paint. I primed all surfaces, and once fully dry, I moved on to the paint. And again, we're not trying to conceal anything at this point, we're just trying to make sure that we have a cohesive look in my garage. Once all the walls have a cohesive coat of paint along with it being dry, I did decide to apply some rubber wall base in hopes that this does protect the drywall if there is ever a flood in the future. I certainly don't think that's going to, especially after installing our water filtration systems, but inevitably you never know what's going to happen. Now that we have our wall base in, we are done with this amazing patch job. I still cannot believe that we got this finish without a single amount of sanding on these flat walls. We did obviously have to sand the corner spot, but these flat areas, we didn't do any sanding whatsoever, and we applied 3 coats in 1 day. Truly remarkable, and please let me know what you thought of this type of video. I know it's a very simple video, but I still think it's truly one beautiful, sexy beast. Oh, and if you are looking for a professional drywaller on YouTube, check out Paul Peck Drywall. Great channel if you're looking for drywall tips. Oh yeah,